The Christmas lights strung along the rafters of Riverside Tavern cast a warm glow that did nothing to ease the knot in Marcus Chen's stomach. He sat at a corner table near the window overlooking the Charles River, watching couples and families pass by on the sidewalk outside, their breath forming clouds in the December cold. His fingers traced the rim of his beer glass, untouched for 20 minutes, while he waited for a woman whose face he had only seen in a profile photo his sister had texted him 3 days ago. This was attempt number 12. 12 blind dates in 24 months, each one ending the same way. Polite conversation that turned stilted the moment he mentioned Sophie. The women would smile, nod, make understanding noises. Then came the shift, subtle but unmistakable, when their eyes would glaze over and they'd start checking their phones. Within 15 minutes, they'd remember a forgotten appointment, an early morning meeting, a sick cat that needed attention. Marcus understood. A 44-year-old accountant with a 7-year-old daughter wasn't exactly a catch in the dating world of Boston's professional class. Add in the modest salary, the rental house in Somerville, and the complete absence of weekend availability due to soccer practice and art classes, and you had a recipe for romantic failure. He'd made peace with it, mostly. Except on nights like this, when loneliness felt like a physical weight pressing against his chest. The woman, Vanessa, a yoga instructor Rachel had met at her gym, arrived at 6:45, 15 minutes late. She had kind eyes and wore her blonde hair in a high ponytail. Marcus stood, shook her hand, tried to read her expression as her gaze swept over him. He'd worn his best shirt, the blue one Jennifer had bought him before Sophie was born, pressed until the creases were sharp enough to cut paper. For 20 minutes it went well. Vanessa taught power yoga in Cambridge. Marcus explained forensic accounting in terms that didn't make people's eyes glaze over. He was good at finding patterns in financial data, spotting the irregularities that meant someone was cooking the books. She laughed at his joke about depreciation schedules. He laughed at her story about a student who'd fallen asleep mid-downward dog. The conversation flowed. Then Vanessa asked if he had children. Marcus pulled out his phone, showed her the photo that lived as his lock screen. Sophie at Boston Common 2 weeks ago, gap-toothed smile, holding up a drawing of a reindeer she'd made at school. Red-brown leaves scattered around her feet, pure joy captured in pixels. Vanessa's smile didn't quite reach her eyes anymore. She studied the photo for 3 seconds that stretched into infinity, then handed the phone back. Her tone shifted from warm to careful, the kind of careful people used when they were about to hurt you but wanted to seem kind doing it. She asked about Sophie's mother. Marcus gave her the practiced answer. Jennifer died 6 years ago, ovarian cancer, stage 4 by the time they caught it. 14 months from diagnosis to funeral. Sophie barely remembered her. Vanessa made sympathetic noises. Then she checked her phone, looked at him with something that might have been pity or might have been relief. The words came out flat, rehearsed. "You're really sweet, Marcus, but I don't think I'm ready for a ready-made family. You're just not my type." She stood before he could respond, left cash for her untouched wine on the table, a $20 bill, more than the drink cost, as if paying extra could somehow soften the rejection. Then she walked out into the Christmas-lit streets of Boston without looking back. Marcus sat frozen, the familiar humiliation washing over him in waves. Around him, the restaurant buzzed with holiday cheer, couples leaning close over candlelit tables, groups of friends laughing over shared plates. He was an island of failure in a sea of connection. His hands trembled as he reached for his wallet. Time to go home, crawl into bed, pretend this evening never happened. In the morning, Sophie would ask how his date went, and he'd lie the way he always did. "It was fine, sweetheart, just didn't work out." He stood pulling on his coat. That's when the voice cut through the ambient noise, clear and calm, with an edge of something Marcus couldn't quite identify. Desperation, maybe, or determination. "Excuse me, would you consider being my husband?" Marcus turned, certain he had misheard. The woman sat at the adjacent table, facing him directly. She was striking in a way that had nothing to do with conventional beauty and everything to do with presence. Dark hair pulled back in a severe ponytail, a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly rent. Eyes that assessed him with the same intensity he used when analyzing balance sheets for hidden fraud. Late 30s, he guessed. The kind of woman who belonged in corner offices, not casual riverside restaurants on Christmas night. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. I'm sorry, what? No smile crossed her face. No hint that this might be a joke. I asked if you would consider being my husband. I'm serious. The room seemed to tilt. Marcus glanced around looking for hidden cameras, friends playing a cruel prank. Nothing. Just this stranger studying him like he was a particularly interesting puzzle. I don't understand. The woman, cool, composed, utterly unreadable, gestured toward the empty chair across from Marcus's abandoned table. I heard everything. Your date, what she said about not being ready for your daughter. Heat crawled up Marcus's neck. Bad enough to be rejected. Worse to have a witness. Look, I appreciate whatever this is, but I need to go. Wait. She stood in one fluid motion. Not desperate, despite what he'd thought. Just firm. Used to being obeyed. I'm serious about my question. Marcus froze, one arm halfway into his coat sleeve. Really looked at her for the first time. Mid-30s, he revised. Expensive watch. Cartier, he thought, though he only knew that because Jennifer had once pointed one out in a magazine. Everything about her screamed success, from the tailored cut of her suit to the way she held herself, spine straight, shoulders back, authority worn as naturally as skin, and she was asking him to marry her. You're insane, he said flatly. The corner of her mouth quirked up, not quite a smile. Probably, but I'm also very alone, and so are you. The words hit harder than they should have. 6 years. 6 years since Jennifer's funeral, since he'd stood in Mount Auburn Cemetery and promised her gravestone he'd take care of their daughter. 6 years of frozen dinners and parent-teacher conferences he attended alone. 6 years of being both mother and father, falling short at both. This woman didn't know any of that. Couldn't know. But something in her eyes suggested she understood loneliness in her own way. Sit down, she continued, her voice losing its edge. Let me buy you dinner. 5 minutes of your time. If you still think I'm crazy after that, you can leave. Every instinct screamed at Marcus to walk away. This was how horror movies started. Stranger makes bizarre proposal, protagonist ignores red flags, ends up dismembered in a basement. But there was something in her expression that stopped him. Not pity, which he'd learned to spot from 50 paces. Something more like recognition, like seeing your own reflection in a stranger's eyes. He sat back down. She signaled the waiter without breaking eye contact, ordered wine for both of them without asking his preference. When the server retreated, she folded her hands on the table with the precision of someone used to boardroom negotiations. My family has been pressuring me to get married for 3 years. They parade eligible men in front of me at every holiday dinner like I'm supposed to pick one off a shelf at Whole Foods. Marcus said nothing, waited. Her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Every man I've dated only wanted 2 things, my money or my connections. I built my company from nothing. And now that it's successful, everyone wants a piece. Nobody wants me. The waiter returned with wine. She picked up her glass but didn't drink, just held it like a prop. I want a family, a real one, not a transaction disguised as romance, just people who actually care about each other. Marcus recognized that ache in her voice, the yearning for something whole. Why me? I heard you talking before your date arrived. You told the bartender your daughter drew you a picture of a reindeer this morning, that she's learning about Rudolph in school and thinks he's the best character because he's different, and that makes him special. Marcus blinked. He had said that to the bartender who'd made sympathetic noises while pouring his beer. 15 minutes before Vanessa showed up. I can't have children. The words came out flat, stripped of emotion. Medical condition, irreversible. When I told my ex-fiancé, he called off the wedding, said he wanted a real family. Anger flared hot in Marcus's chest. That's horrible. It is, but it's also reality. She set down her wine glass with careful precision. You have a daughter who needs a mother figure. I want to be a mother, but physically cannot. You keep getting rejected for having a child. I keep getting rejected for not being able to produce them. She leaned forward slightly. What if we helped each other? Not a fairy tale, a partnership, A practical arrangement that could become something real. Marcus stared at her. She was serious, completely, utterly serious. I don't know anything about you, not even your name. Elena Hartwell. I'm CEO of Technova Solutions. We do cybersecurity software for financial institutions. Started the company 11 years ago in my garage. Now we have 220 employees and 47 million in revenue. She recited the facts like items on a grocery list. I'm 37. I grew up in Boston, Back Bay specifically. My parents are difficult. I have no siblings. I like Thai food and documentaries about space. I hate small talk and people who chew with their mouths open. Despite everything, Marcus felt his lips twitch toward a smile. Marcus Chen, 44, forensic accountant at Morrison & Associates. I catch people who steal from their own companies. I have a daughter, Sophie, who's 7. She loves art and hates broccoli. My wife died 6 years ago from ovarian cancer. I've been alone ever since. Elena nodded slowly as if he'd confirmed something she'd already suspected. I looked you up while you were waiting for your date. Morrison & Associates has a solid reputation. You personally led the audit that uncovered the embezzlement scheme at Berkshire Manufacturing 2 years ago. Saved the company $12 million. Marcus's eyebrows rose. She'd done her homework. You researched me? I make 6-figure decisions every day. You think I'd approach someone without doing basic due diligence? She pulled a manila envelope from the leather bag at her feet, slid it across the table. Prenuptial agreement. I had my lawyer draft a template 6 months ago when I first considered this approach. Never found anyone worth using it on. Until tonight. Marcus opened the envelope with hands that didn't quite feel like his own. Inside, 20 pages of legal language, but the terms were straightforward. Separate finances, no claim to her company or assets. Provisions for Sophie's education and healthcare. Dissolution terms if either party wanted out after 2 years. It was the most romantic yet unromantic thing he'd ever seen. You've been planning this. Not a question. I'm a CEO. I plan everything. Elena's expression softened fractionally. But I've been alone for 4 years, Marcus. Since Bradford, my ex, ended things. I'm tired of being alone. Tired of my parents setting me up with men who see dollar signs instead of a person. Tired of feeling like I'm incomplete because my body won't cooperate with societal expectations. She met his eyes directly. And I think you're tired too. Tired of rejection. Tired of doing everything alone. Tired of your daughter asking for something you can't give her. Marcus's throat closed. This morning, before he'd made Sophie's favorite chocolate chip pancakes, before he'd driven her to school and promised tonight's date would go well, she'd asked him one simple question. Daddy, why don't I have a mommy like the other kids? He hadn't known how to answer, still didn't. This is insane, he said, but the words lacked conviction. Elena signaled the waiter again. Let's eat, get to know each other. You can give us your answer after dessert. They ordered. Elena asked about Sophie, what she liked, what she struggled with, what made her laugh. Marcus found himself talking more than he had in months, maybe years, about Sophie's talent for drawing, how she could lose herself for hours with just paper and colored pencils. About the time she tried to give their neighbor's dog a bath and flooded the backyard. About parent-teacher conferences where he sat alone among couples and felt like an imposter. Elena listened with focused intensity, asking follow-up questions that showed she was actually processing the information rather than just being polite. She didn't look at her phone once. When Marcus asked about her company, Elena's eyes lit up in a way they hadn't before. She explained how she'd identified a gap in the market for mid-sized banks that couldn't afford enterprise-level security but needed better protection than off-the-shelf solutions. How she'd taught herself to code at night while working a day job as a junior analyst. How the first 3 years had been brutal, sleeping 4 hours a night, living on ramen, maxing out credit cards to make payroll. My parents told me I was throwing my life away. My father said I should have gone to law school like he wanted. My mother said no man would want a woman who works 70-hour weeks. Elena's expression hardened. They cut me off financially when I refused to quit. Said I needed to learn about consequences. Did you? I learned that I'm better off without their money, and that the people who love you shouldn't put conditions on that love. She paused. which is why I haven't spoken to them in 3 years. Not since they made it clear I was a disappointment for not being married with children by 35. The waiter cleared their plates, brought dessert, creme brulee that neither of them touched. Lena pulled out her phone, set it on the table between them. Put your number in, let me meet Sophie. Let's see if this insane idea could actually work. Marcus's hands trembled as he picked up the phone. This was crazy. Absolute madness. You didn't marry strangers because you were both lonely. That's not how functional relationships worked. But then again, traditional dating wasn't working either. 12 failures in 2 years. How many more rejections before he gave up entirely? Before Sophie stopped asking about why she didn't have a mother? Before he turned into one of those bitter single parents who'd convinced themselves they were better off alone? He typed in his number, handed the phone back. Elena's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes softened. Relief, maybe. Or hope. I mean it. I want to meet Sophie. I want to see if we can build something real out of this practical arrangement. Why are you doing this? Marcus asked one more time, needing to understand. Really? Elena stood, gathering her bag and coat. She looked down at him, and for just a moment, the CEO mask slipped entirely. Underneath was raw vulnerability, the kind that comes from too many nights spent alone in empty apartments. Because I'm tired of being alone, and because when I heard you talk about your daughter this evening, the love in your voice, the pride, I thought, that's what family sounds like. That's what I want. She left cash on the table to cover both meals, more than enough. Then she walked toward the exit, pausing just before the door. Think about it, Marcus, but don't take too long. Loneliness has a way of making us settle for less than we deserve. Then she was gone, disappearing into the Christmas lights and winter darkness. Marcus sat alone at the table, staring at the text message that had already appeared on his phone. This is Elena. Call me when you're ready. For the first time in 6 years, he felt something other than resignation, something dangerous and terrifying and impossible to ignore. Hope. 3 days passed. Marcus didn't call. Monday morning began at 5:30, same as always. He made breakfast for Sophie, scrambled eggs, toast with too much butter, the way she liked it, orange juice in her favorite cup with the faded Disney princess, packed her lunch while she ate, making sure to include the string cheese she'd begged for and the apple slices he knew she'd trade away. Drove her to Somerville Elementary by 7:15, watched her run toward the building with her backpack bouncing, purple coat bright against the gray morning. Then the real day started. 45 minutes on the Red Line to downtown crossing, packed shoulder to shoulders with commuters who avoided eye contact. Up to the offices of Morrison and Associates on the 14th floor of a building that had been modern in 1985 and hadn't updated since. His desk was in a cluster of 5 cubicles, gray fabric walls that absorbed sound and hope in equal measure. Spreadsheets, always spreadsheets. Today it was the preliminary audit for Newton Energy, a mid-sized company in Waltham that wanted to go public in 18 months. Marcus's job was finding the problems before the SEC did, tracking every expense, every asset, every liability, looking for patterns that didn't fit, numbers that were too clean, transactions that happened at convenient times. He was good at it, had a knack for seeing what other accountants missed, but it was also mind-numbing work, hour after hour of comparing figures, building models, testing assumptions, the kind of work that lets your mind wander if you weren't careful. Marcus's mind wandered to Elena. He'd been thinking about her constantly for 3 days. The proposal, the prenup, the complete insanity of